Welcome again to Pint Sized Guilt-Free Torah. We all know, that is, if you've ever been to a Passover Seder, that there's a mitzvah to tell over the story of the Exodus. And when it's mentioned in the Torah, it says, "Laman tesaper ba'aznei bincha uben bincha." In order to, you should say, into the ears of your children and your grandchildren. And what's the significance of say it into his ears? Why that? Why doesn't it just say, tell your grandchildren the story, or speak the story in its completion to your grandchildren? What's the significance of in his ears, or the ears of your grandchildren? And this question was asked by a book, a sefer called Marashas Moshe, and he brings a very interesting idea that when you tell a story, the story really depends on the narrative, how the story is broadcast, how it's explained, from what perspective. And if you give a story, the exact same story, but without the proper narrative or understanding or connection, then the story will have much less meaning. For example, somebody could talk about the founding of the state of Israel and said, and in 1948, this happened, and the UN passed a resolution, and Israel fought a war, and then they won their independence. And you could just say it similar, perhaps, to Pakistan in 1947, was separated from India and other countries in the Middle East after World War I. Then Syria became a nation. And this, you just say it in this regular format like other countries. Or you could tell it, a nation got back its land after 2,000 years. That's unknown in history. And they revived a language to be spoken in that nation, in Israel. Hebrew as a language hadn't been spoken in 2,000 years. And what an incredible thing that is in the history of all of humanity. That's a different way of telling that story. And so there are two reasons to say something into somebody's ear. The one obvious reason is that you want to make sure no one else hears it. But the second reason is in order to make sure that person is paying attention to your story and that he's blocking out of everything else that's going on. Like, we've all had conversations with people, and we see people's eyes rolling around, and we see people on their cell phones sometimes when they're speaking with us. And when you speak in somebody's ear, that person is paying attention to you to the exclusion of everything else. We need to tell the story into the ears of our children and grandchildren because it's our narrative and our story, and to the exclusion of everyone else. We don't hear their version. When we tell our version of, in 1967, we got back the Western Wall. Incredible, 2,000 years the Jewish people have been praying for this and waiting for it, and it came in Jewish hands. If you can listen, you can hear it on YouTube. Motel Gora, one of the commanding officers, he said, Harabayit Bi'adenu, which basically means the Temple Mount, the Western Wall, that whole area. It's in our hands. It's in our hands. Jews have been waiting for this for so long. And this was a momentous moment in Jewish history, a watershed moment in Jewish history. It's incredible. If you tell the story like that, that's much different than, and there was the 1967 war, the Jews won back some more land, and no. It's most miraculous how the Jews got it back, and an anomaly in history what happened to the Jewish people since the founding of the state of Israel. So when you speak something into somebody's ears, it's your version and no one else's. When we speak the Exodus, it's the story of God saved his people. He heard their cries. He saw their difficulties and everything going on in the slavery in Egypt. And he comes to help them due to his love for them. And that's a story that God is not just an absentee landlord up there. He's not just didn't create the world and he doesn't care what's going on like we have just recently spoke about in the last few days. But no, he concerns himself with this world and he concerns himself with his people and he really cares. And we're in a very difficult situation right now since October 7th. but he's going to get us out of this one too. And that is a story of Jewish history. God knows what's going on. He cares, and he ultimately gets us out of the situation. He got us through the czars. He got us through the Greeks. He got us through the Romans. He got us through the communists. Got us through the Holocaust. He got us through it all. And he gave us back a state of Israel. And we're going to get through this one too. Our history needs to be told, and certainly the Exodus story, through the lens of authentic Jewish thought, which is that God saved a persecuted people. It was important enough to come down, so to speak, to this world and save them. And he hears their cries, and he hears our cries, both as a nation, as individuals, as he has for all generations. And that's the unique thing about our history, and why we need to speak it into the ears of our children and grandchildren, and even into our own ears, to know that something's unique here. Have a great day.